Early the next morning, Emery found himself standing stiffly in front of Julian's door. His hand hovered mid-air, refusing to knock just yet. The memory of their kiss kept replaying in his mind, sending ripples of confusion through him. What was he even supposed to say when Julian opened the door? Pretend it never happened? Act normal? He ran a hand through his hair, exhaled sharply, then finally forced himself to knock. The door creaked open, and Julian appeared, hair mussed from sleep, eyes heavy but still arresting. He wasn't wearing a shirt, and Emery's breath caught in his throat. For a split second, his gaze dropped lower than it should have before he flushed, face burning red. He spun his head away almost too quickly. Julian noticed. His eyes widened in realization, and he muttered, "Shit, wait," before disappearing back inside. A few seconds later he returned, tugging on a shirt, looking half amused and half apologetic. "What are you doing here so early?" Julian asked, trying to sound casual even though the air between them was charged with awkwardness. Emery, after clearing his throat and trying to regain his composure, finally managed to say, "We need to get to the center. People will be arriving soon, you don't want to be late." His voice wavered slightly, but he covered it up by adjusting the strap of the bag he was carrying. Julian blinked, then slapped his forehead lightly. "Right. Damn. I almost forgot." He quickly ducked inside, splashed water on his face, and came back looking fresher, though the tension in the air hadn't lifted. They walked in silence to the boat. As it drifted over the water, Emery sat stiffly, eyes trained on the horizon. Julian couldn't help but glance at him, noticing the way Emery clutched the strap of his bag tightly, almost as if it anchored him. "What's in there?" Julian asked finally, trying to break the silence. Emery looked down at the bag. "Medical supplies," he said simply. "It's not a lot, but I'll do what I can. If people get hurt, they'll need someone to at least patch them up." Julian studied him for a moment, seeing the mix of determination and worry on his face. He wanted to say something reassuring, but the memory of last night hung heavy between them, pressing unspoken words into the silence as the boat carried them forward. They soon arrived at the center, where the place was already buzzing with noise and movement. A long line of people waited patiently, some holding children, others leaning on friends or relatives, all looking for medical attention. The air felt heavy with both hope and weariness. Without hesitation, Emery slipped right into his role. His posture straightened, his expression softens, and he begins tending to patients one by one with calm precision. He knelt to check on a crying child, offered gentle reassurance to a worried mother, and spoke kindly to an elderly man as he listens to his heartbeat. There was a quiet steadiness about him, the kind that draws people in. Julian, meanwhile, moved to oversee the progress of the home construction. The sound of hammering and wood being lifted filled the air. Volunteers were already working in earnest, sweat dripping down their brows, but their spirits were high. Julian gave instructions, lent a hand where needed, and kept things moving along smoothly. And yet, his attention kept drifting. Every so often, his gaze slid back to Emery. He watched him work, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way his smile lit up tired faces. There was something magnetic about it, and Julian found himself completely captivated. He told himself to focus on the buildings, but his eyes betrayed him every time. Then Nikki arrived. With his usual charm and energy, he made his way to Emery's side, rolling up his sleeves and offering to help. Emery accepted the assistance with a grateful smile that made Julian's stomach twist. He tried to ignore it, but when Emery chuckled softly at something Nikki said, Julian felt his chest tighten with an unfamiliar, uncomfortable heat. When Nikki eventually walked over to check on him, Julian couldn't help himself. "Why are you hovering around Emery like that?" "He can handle himself," Julian blurted, his tone sharper than intended. Nikki arched an eyebrow, immediately catching on. "Oh," he drawled, amused. "You sound a little jealous." Julian scoffed, looking away too quickly. "Don't be ridiculous. But Nikki just smirked, unconvinced. "I've known you a long time, Julian. I've never seen you act this way with anyone before. You might want to ask yourself why that is." His words linger, teasing yet pointed, before he strolled off, leaving Julian unsettled. Hours passed before a kind, middle-aged woman arrived with trays of food. She'd cooked a hearty meal for everyone, and the smell alone made tired faces brighten. They gathered around a large table, laughter and chatter mixing with the clinking of plates. As they ate, Emery reached for something just out of his grasp. Before he could say a word, Nikki leaned over to help him, but Julian acted faster, sliding the item toward Emery with a firm hand. The table went silent for a beat. Emery blinked, startled, before his cheeks flushed faintly pink. The corners of his mouth twitched into the smallest of smiles, while the others exchanged knowing looks. Julian, pretending not to notice, busied himself with his food. But inside, his heart was hammering. Meanwhile, Hale woke up tangled in Thorne's sheets, the faint smell of him lingering in the room. Thorne was beside him, still half asleep, his arm draped lazily across Hale's chest as though he had no intention of letting him move an inch. Hale stared at the ceiling, his thoughts already elsewhere, already on Julian. The idea of Julian spending more time with Emery gnawed at him. He couldn't stand the thought of them together, not even for a minute longer. A quiet fear churned inside him. What if the pull between them, the one they hadn't even noticed yet, grew stronger while he was stuck here? He shifted, trying to slip out of bed, but Thorne tightened his hold, voice low and firm. "Stay. Just 2 more days. That's all I'm asking. 2 days." It sounded harmless enough, but to Hale it felt like a dangerous eternity. His ambition, his constant need to win, to hold on to what was his, kept him rooted in place. Against his better judgment, he gave in and stayed. But no matter how warm Thorne's bed was, no matter how tempting his presence could be, Hale's mind was still far away, restless and circling back to Emery and Julian. Devon Montgomery sat alone in his study, his mind a storm of frustration and fear. For the first time in a long while, he felt powerless. Olivia's threats echoed in his head like an endless taunt, and he hated himself for ever turning to her in the first place. He should have known better, he did know better. Their history stretched back years, tangled with secrets he had sworn would never see the light of day. Secrets that could destroy him if she ever decided to open her mouth. And Olivia. Olivia was not the kind of woman you crossed lightly. Beautiful, cunning, and utterly ruthless, she had always been a dangerous woman. Devon knew it, yet he had gone back to her, desperate and foolish. Now she was circling his company like a vulture, waiting for him to collapse so she could swoop in and claim it for herself. He rubbed a hand over his face, sighing deeply. What am I supposed to do? How do I stop her? If only things were different. If only his children were daughters, he might have secured some powerful marriage alliances by now, linking his family to wealthier ones that could bail him out of this crisis. But no, he had 2 sons. And not just sons, but sons who were proudly, unashamedly gay. That avenue was completely closed off to him. The bitterness rose in his chest like bile. He hated himself for even thinking it, but a part of him wished he had other children, children who could be used to shield him from this mess. As it stood, he was cornered. A sharp knock at the door broke him out of his brooding. He straightened in his chair, frowning. "Come in," he called, his voice carrying both weariness and curiosity. The door opened, and to Devon's surprise, a tall, sharply dressed young man stepped inside. For a moment, Devon blinked, not quite believing his eyes. "Rupert?" The young man's lips curved into a charming smile. "Uncle Devon. It's been a long time." "Rupert Costner," Devon breathed, pushing up from his chair with genuine delight. He crossed the room and pulled his godson into a hearty embrace. "My word, it must be, what? 5 years? 6. Closer to 7, Rupert replied with a chuckle, his voice smooth and self-assured. Devon pulled back to look at him properly. Rupert had grown into an undeniably handsome man, broad-shouldered, confident, the kind of presence that drew eyes wherever he went. And of course, the Costners were as wealthy as ever, their fortune built on the sprawling chain of international luxury resorts they owned across Europe and Asia. The family was practically swimming in money. "This is a surprise," Devon said warmly, motioning for Rupert to sit. "I didn't know you were even in the country." "I came on business," Rupert explained, taking the seat opposite Devon's desk. "But I thought I'd stop by. It's been too long since I checked on family." His gaze softened. "How are Hale and Emery?" "They're well," Devon said with a faint smile, though it quickly faltered. He let out a long sigh and shook his head. "Though I can't say the same for myself. Things have been difficult, financially." Rupert leaned forward, his expression turning sympathetic. "I'm sorry to hear that, Uncle. Truly." Devon waved a hand, as if brushing off his own struggles, though the weariness in his eyes betrayed him. "It's the times, boy. Business isn't what it used to be." As they spoke, Rupert's attention drifted toward the polished oak desk. His eyes caught on a silver-framed photograph resting there, a candid picture of Devon flanked by his sons, Hale and Emery. Rupert reached out, almost absent-mindedly, and picked it up. "Your boys," he said softly, studying the image. "They've grown into very fine men." His tone carried an edge of admiration, but Devon didn't miss the way Rupert's gaze lingered on the picture. Devon, ever the calculating man, caught it instantly. His mind whirred with possibilities. Well, perhaps fate isn't as cruel as I thought." "You should come to dinner tomorrow night," Devon said suddenly, his tone warm and inviting. "Join us. The boys would love to see you, it's been years." Rupert looked up from the photo, his smile widening. "I'd be delighted." "Good," Devon said with a nod, masking the sharp glint in his eyes. "We'll make it a proper family evening." As they continued to talk, Devon's thoughts drifted elsewhere. He could barely hear his godson's words over the thunder of his own schemes. Rupert's interest in Emery was obvious, and to Devon, it was the answer he'd been searching for. If he could steer Emery and Rupert together, that bond, sealed by the immense Costner fortune, might just be enough to pull him out of his financial abyss. And more importantly, it would put a wall between Olivia and his company, shielding him from her clutches. For the first time in weeks, Devon allowed himself a small, hopeful smile. The next morning, Emery walked into the center, expecting to see the same bare space they'd been working with. Instead, his eyes widened. Along the walls were shelves stacked with fresh medical supplies, bandages, antiseptics, even equipment he hadn't dared dream of getting. For a second, he just stood there, frozen in shock. "Where did all this come from?" Emery asked, turning toward Julian. Julian, ever calm and slightly smug, leaned against the doorframe. "I called in a favor from Julian Halstead. Told him what we were trying to do here. He pulled some strings." Emery blinked, still taking it all in. A slow smile tugged at his lips, and he looked genuinely impressed. "Julian, this is incredible. Thank you. I wish there were a way to tell Julian Halstead myself how grateful I am." Julian brushed it off with a shrug, but the flicker in his eyes betrayed something warmer. Not long after, Nikki caught up with Julian in a quiet corner. His tone was half teasing, half approving. "Smart move. Helping Emery like this, when really, you are Julian Halstead. Shows just how much you care about him." Julian's jaw tightened. He didn't reply, and Nikki's knowing smile only deepened. Inside, he was restless. Caring for Emery was dangerous. Every good deed, every slip of kindness, chipped away at the armor he'd built for his revenge against Devon Montgomery, Emery's father. He couldn't afford distractions, least of all this one. Later that day, while hammering away at the framework of the new home, Julian's foot slipped on a loose board. He lost his balance and stumbled, crashing down hard. The sound was enough to make Emery's heart jolt. Julian. Emery dropped everything and rushed to him, kneeling by his side. His hands trembled slightly as he checked the scrape along Julian's arm. "You could have really hurt yourself." "I'm fine," Julian muttered, though his voice was a little strained. "Fine." Emery shot him a look, gently but firmly pressing a cloth against the wound. "You're bleeding, Julian." The space between them grew charged, Emery's closeness, his worried eyes, the warmth of his touch. Julian felt it all like fire under his skin. His gaze lifted to Emery's face, and for a heartbeat too long, he couldn't look away. The urge to lean in, to kiss him, was almost unbearable. Emery seemed to feel it too, the tension thick, their breaths mingling in the small space between them. But just as their eyes met, a voice cut through the moment. "Emery." Both their heads snapped up. Rupert stood, arms crossed, eyes sharp as he watched them. The air shifted instantly, heavy with unspoken things. Thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe to the channel for more episodes.